I'll always say the same thing.
There must be 100 analyses of No Country for Old Men on YouTube, so let me start by telling you something that none of the others do. Anton is a Latin name commonly translated as priceless, and I think it's pretty obvious how this is thematically appropriate to Anton.
You can't make a deal with him. Even if you gave him the money back, he'd still kill you just for inconveniencing him.
But that isn't the only level of significance to his name. Anton originates with the Roman family of the Antoni, and they claim descent from Hercules. Hercules is relevant because his first trial was killing a lion, by strangling actually, and Llewellyn is a Welsh name that translates to lion. Of course, hunting is a motif that is used throughout the film, but I think it is mostly supposed to stand in for every goal-directed human activity. There is one thing thematically special about hunting as a goal-directed activity, though. Unlike some other goals, the goal in hunting is capable of moving on its own. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. I wanted to go onto another layer of the meaning in Llewellyn. See, not only does the name translate to lion, but there were a few important Welsh kings named Llewellyn, most notably the Last. Llewellyn the Last fought a war against King Edward of England, a losing war. It was a war waged primarily over the enforcement of the old Welsh law system, Cyfeirith Howell, a system notably different from the English common law system and whose laws of equal inheritance may have divided the Welsh nobility more than the English under primogeniture.
If the rule you followed, brudged it is, of what use was the rule?
And here we are getting at the central theme of No Country for Old Men. It is a movie about what to do when you find yourself fighting a losing war, or at least a war that you can't win. While Ed may have won the war against Llewellyn in medieval Britain, Shire Reeve is a position under Germanic Anglo-Saxon laws and did not exist under the Celtic Cyfeirith Howell. Tom likely refers to Thomas More, who famously resisted Henry VIII's change of the official English religion. But Bell, the last name of Tommy Lee Jones' sheriff, doesn't refer to this kind of bell. Bell means war, and war's occasional inability to deliver justice, at least in this instance, is central to the film and its themes. In Cormac McCarthy's view, the monologue we see delivered by Llewellyn here in his scene at the motel that was not in the film describes Llewellyn's flaws as a character. Your notions about starting over, or anybody's, you don't start over. That's what it's about. Every step you take is forever. You can't make it go away, none of it. You understand what I'm saying? I know you don't, but let me try it one more time. You think when you wake up in the morning, yesterday don't count. What else is there? Your life is made out of the days it's made out of, nothing else. You might think that you could run away and change your name, I don't know what all. Start over. And then one morning you wake up and look at the ceiling and guess who's laying there. Like Llewellyn the Last, Llewellyn Moss is stubbornly bound to a path that is defined by the past. He refuses to give up on taking the money no matter what the very apparent odds against himself are.
And they won't quit.
He won't neither. He never has.
He does little to modify his approach to the problem he faces, no matter the developments in the story. Very much unlike a Rolling Stone, Llewellyn has gathered moss. He metaphorically stands still in his stubbornness, unwilling to deviate from his plans.
You hold still.
Will you hold still, please, sir?
And what are rules but a set of plans to deal with foreseen future events? But No Country for Old Men is not nihilistic, despite this criticism of rules. Bell's uncle pretty much definitively rejects as an interpretation that the violence in the film is supposed to represent a degradation in society, as Sheriff Bell sees it. This can also be taken as a reference to McCarthy's prior work, Blood Meridian, which showcases many heinous acts in the Wild West even further in the past. No Country for Old Men definitively suggests an answer to the problem of the inadequacy of rules. In a sense, the answer is a meta-rule that is never broken. Always be adaptable. What does Chigurh mean? We've gone through the meaning of every name for the three main characters except this one. Chigurh does not mean anything. It's symbolic of a void. In particular, Anton Chigurh is very much unlike the story we hear in Llewellyn's excluded motel monologue. Anton Chigurh is a man without a past. It is like he appears out of thin air. Basically, nothing connects him to the past. When we first encounter him, it is in the middle of an event, his arrest. We do not see what preceded that. And like an absence of the beginning of a story, Chigurh is meant to leave his familial background and ethnicity as a purposeful omission. And Chigurh is, in many respects, the role model for effective action in Cormac McCarthy's world. He's adaptable and always willing to change. He acts as if every moment is the first moment of existence, and he has simply appeared in media res. The car accident at the end of the film is perhaps the most potent representation of this. Unlike Llewellyn's stubborn pursuit of the money, Chigurh is willing to alter his plans if a new unforeseen circumstance emerges. He literally changes the direction he is heading as he exits the scene here after formulating a new plan of action. But Chigurh completely surrenders himself to the outside world. He is portrayed as being completely unable to make a decision himself, and turning to a coin to make decisions instead. Chigurh sees himself as following the path set by Llewellyn in killing Carla Jean at the end of the film. He sees himself purely as the universe's tool. His actions are dictated by external circumstances, and as we learn in another book monologue, his will to live. Quote, "You're asking that I make myself vulnerable, and that I can never do. I have only one way to live." Unquote. Unlike Llewellyn, who loses both the money and the family the money was for, Chigurh survives. His willingness to break rules of order and do anything the situation calls for give him a near mystical ability to act effectively. All of Chigurh's victims are seemingly hypnotized by his unusualness.
It's unusual.
More than death or time, Chigurh represents the unexpected. That is why he has such an unusual appearance, uses such unusual tools of death, and operates in such an unusual manner. We are meant to see that what his victims should do is seek escape as the encounter becomes more and more unusual with Chigurh. Their failure to do so, their standing still, dooms them. Well, most of them. I think there's an assertion about the distinction between men and animals in this motif. Like Anton represents a man hunting a lion, the man is able to use his brain and adapt to novel situations, whereas the lion mostly relies on hunting instincts bred into its DNA.
I seen one of the cats hurt it.
How'd you know it was my truck?
I deduced it.
This ability to both plan as well as break old plans and make new plans is what separates humanity from animals for McCarthy. Hunters like lions or wolves can't deal with the unusual things that human hunters invent.
Hey, Lord.
Ain't no Lobos.
The message of the film was that Llewellyn should have given up. Llewellyn should have stopped fighting the losing war he was in as it became apparent that he was meeting something he didn't understand. When Chigurh makes the offer to Llewellyn, it really is a way out of the ordeal and a way to save what he truly valued. And the fact that Chigurh is a role model in this way may be surprising given that, well...
He's a psychopathic killer, but so what? There's plenty of them around.
This is because, as I said, the movie is about the occasional inability of war to deliver justice. Like Sheriff Bell's previous ability to lock up another psycho killer referenced in his opening monologue, some justice is served by wars. Bell is notably a World War II veteran in the book. But Llewellyn is a Vietnam veteran.
Yeah, I was in them.
So was I.
And Vietnam was not the only hopeless war the US government has recently fought. Another pertinent war to the movie is the war on drugs, which is, of course, central to the plot. But perhaps most important for the motivation to produce the film was the then relatively recent global war on terror, and likely particularly our second invasion of Iraq. The Coen Brothers previously commented on the first Gulf War in another one of their more abstract and symbolic films, The Big Lebowski.
This will not stand, this aggression against Kuwait.
By the time the Coen Brothers would have been in talks to produce the 2005 book as their 2007 movie, it would have been very apparent that the ostensible goals we had for the second Iraq War were impossible to achieve. And McCarthy, as well as the Coen Brothers, likely believed the US should have adapted its policies in these wars, like Chigurh does when getting hit by the unexpected car, and likely quit them in a manner similar to Sheriff Bell's ability to adapt to the situation and retire.
Well, all the time you spend trying to get back what's been took from you, more is going out the door. After a while, you just have to try to get a tourniquet on it.
But Chigurh isn't the hero. Bell is. Chigurh's surrender to the outside world is so complete that he effectively eradicates himself. While he is likely meant to literally exist within McCarthy's world, despite things like the absence of a definite description in the book, or the fact that most people who see him wind up dead, he metaphorically does not exist because he refuses to make decisions. He at least sees himself as having no ability to project his will into the world, other than perhaps the will to live. But Bell has a goal. While Bell does adapt to some situations when in over his head, he still does pursue justice. Sometimes he gets it, as was in the situation in the off-screen case mentioned in his opening monologue. The difference between Bell and Llewellyn is in his ability to focus on his goal and not be distracted. This is the meaning of the first dream in the closing dialogue from Bell. He is unconcerned with the cash. Bell carries the fire. Llewellyn is distracted by the cash. In a sense, Llewellyn does not pick the right tool for the job of providing for his family.
He felt that the more people looking...
That's foolish. You pick the one right tool.
Of course, as is pointed out by Wendigoon, the road is basically the dream Bell is describing. As we see in the characters adapting to a post-apocalyptic world in that story, the adaptation and change you do in response to the changing events of the world should be centered on your own values and not merely surviving. And now you have a deeper understanding of No Country for Old Men.
Anything about that you don't understand?
No, sir.
It isn't nihilistic, as some people believe. It is just making a point about adaptability, and that inherently is kinda anti-rule-making. This understanding of the film ties together all of the plot events and motifs, particularly Chigurh's use of the coin and his car accident in the closing scene. As always, if anything I said made you think, please hit the like button and consider subscribing to my channel. This has been Shiva's Right Foot, and I'll talk to you next time.